2, 1. All right, we are live today. Welcome to another edition of Anthropological Inquiries. I'm Michael Kilman, and today we're going to talk about tribal law and customs with Dr. Birpal Singh. We're going to start out today by asking Dr. Singh a little bit about yourself. Can you introduce yourself for us?
So thank you so much, Professor Michael Gilman, for giving me this opportunity. I am Dr. Birpal Singh, presently working as a senior associate professor in the National Law Institute University, Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh in India. Okay, basically I have been a student of anthropology. I have completed my master's degree in anthropology, then my PhD degree also in anthropology. I have worked among certain tribal groups of India like Tharu, Bhils, Bhilala are the postgraduate level. Okay, here my students are different. They are the law students, especially the law graduates doing their BA, LLB degrees. So I am teaching these students that paper. Okay, and I completed my this PG degree as well this PhD degree from Department of Anthropology, Lucknow University in the state of Uttar Pradesh in India. So that is brief about me. Yes, I have some publications in the area of tribal studies and research. Okay, I also completed 3 books like the Tribal Culture and Society, the Affirmative Action in India, and also one book that is the Social Inequality and Exclusion among the tribes in India. Okay, and beside this, I have many publications, more than 40 publications, especially all discussing or talking about the tribal worldview, basically in reference to Indian tribal population. So that is brief about me.
Yeah, 40 publications is pretty impressive. So glad to have you on the show. You talk a little bit about you've worked with tribes. Can you tell us about what tribes you've worked with and what regions of India we're talking about?
Yes. Thanks for asking this. Okay, basically as part of my PG dissertation, that is MA here, the Master of Arts in Anthropology. Okay, what I completed among the Bhil tribe of Rajasthan. Okay, then my PhD thesis, which I completed among the Tharu. And Tharu are inhabiting the whole Tarai belt of the state of Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand. And also, they are the inhabitant of one other regions of this country, that is India, in the Champaran district of Bihar. You might heard the name of the Bihar. Okay, otherwise you will not find there any indications that Tharu tribals. So my work on Tharu tribals and the topic which I titled about my work, that the continuity and change among the Tharus of Lakhimpur Kheri district in Uttar Pradesh. What I tried to cover as a research scholar during my PhD work, that to understand the holistic aspect of Tharu tribal structure, basically the changes which they have perceived after the impact of mainstream culture, or what we can say after the modernization, and now what is the change process, everybody talking about the impact of globalization. So how their marriages have changed with the passage of time, the family structure, nomenclature, the importance of kingdoms among the Tharu tribal children. Okay, how they are forgetting their own kingdoms, traditional kingdoms, and now applying as part of mainstream culture to see a certain extent a kind of the superior notions, because they try to find out, they think that the young generations, especially among the Tharu tribals, that if they adopt these cultural traits of like the kingdoms, the modern mummy, papa, are you getting my point? Okay, so they may be also called become a modern person. So there are so many changes. There change in the religious belief, change in the rights of land, change in the relationship between the forest, as we all know. So these are the general observations of my work on the PhD, which I have done among the Tharus of Lakhimpur Kheri district in Uttar Pradesh. You might heard the name of one of the national park, that named as Dudhwa National Park in India. Okay, so these are the inhabitants of that Tarai regions of the state of Uttar Pradesh, where I focused my study. And initially, I selected 4 villages. Okay, so my whole study focuses on those 4 villages, talking about the every aspect of their cultural patterns, as I mentioned, the economy, the religion, the political structure, the marriage relations, the family, the kinship, the religious worldview of the Tharu tribals. So I have tried to detail where the Tharu tribal people are the children stand today in contemporary India after the interference of outsiders, what we call the mainstream culture. Okay, so that is all about my work among the Tharus. And when I joined this National Institute University, I also conducted one research project funded by United Nations Development Program, UNDP. Okay, and as part of that project, where I was associated as a research associate, right? I also visited some of the tribal belts of the state of Madhya Pradesh. And Madhya Pradesh, as you might be aware about, one of the states in this country which signify the maximum tribal population. Okay, and there we interact the Bhils, we try to find out how they resolve their disputes. Okay, if any issue come before what are the traditional councils? Number 1. Number 2, once we have become the part of nation state and India has adopted uniform structure of governance under the law of the land, what we call the Constitution of India, to whether these groups have any rights to protect, to preserve, and to accommodate their traditional practices without losing their identities with the impact of modern culture or with the influence of mainstream culture. Whether the Constitution of India has given any rights for the protection, position of these tribal groups. So that is all about my research work and my publications where I try to find out. Okay. So if your next question, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you mentioned the changes there at the end. You know, are you seeing a lot of generational changes? So you know, a lot of, I know here in the United States, for example, a lot of people, you know, you get significant changes in generation just because the technological differences, for example. Are you seeing that in a lot of these tribal cultures? Are they very integrated on the internet? Are they on social media, places like that? Is that impacting their culture?
Okay, that we cannot say that because there is no uniformity in terms of the technological advancement. Yes, there are tribals of certain regions of this country, especially the tribals of northeastern regions of India. They are quite internet savvy. Okay, they are quite well educated. Okay, well, compared to the other parts of this country, okay, they are not that much educated. Okay, and some of them, and here we have the different nomenclatures in terms of giving a formal category to a population or group whom we can call the scheduled tribe or tribe. Or is there any difference between the indigenous people to tribal people? Okay, so when you're talking about the technological advancement or educational advancement and any advancement in the area which has changed the worldview of the tribal peoples when they compare themselves at the level of their own society traditionally. Okay, so certain tribal groups which who have really changed a lot, but it's certain tribal groups, a majority of the other tribal, not say the certain tribal groups who are still struggling to hire their pace with the mainstream culture of Indian society. The region, the isolated areas, as we all know, that generally the indigenous people or the tribal people name which we see in case of our country, that is the India. Okay, they reside in the places which are quite inaccessible. Okay, remote areas, hilly areas, and where the facilities of the government schemes and programs have also not reached in that extent, seeing the geographical locations. So every tribal group is not on same parameter so far development is concerned.
Yeah, of course, of course. I mean, obviously, they all have different access to different things. So, So, let's talk about traditional knowledge and law, because that was one of the features in one of your papers. First off, what is traditional knowledge? And I know sometimes in anthropology it's called traditional ecological knowledge, or just indigenous knowledge. Lots of different nomenclature for that term. So tell us a little bit about traditional knowledge and then how it relates to your work.
Yes, right. Since we know knowledge means to have some understanding some about something, when called about the traditional knowledge, especially in case of the tribal people, okay, it has its own advantage. It has its own significance. In the sense that, as we know, why we are losing that traditional knowledge? Because this modern notion of medicine, what we call the allopathic medicine, that was not the initial feature of any society. Okay, it developed later. But prior to development of this allopathic medicine or modern medicine, people were surviving. They are curing the diseases. Okay, but in case of the tribals, when we talk about the traditional knowledge, why this knowledge is on the verge of extinction? Though now there are legal enactments through which the respective governments of the countries, even the same case of the Indian country, they have the legal enactment in the form of Biological Diversity Act 2002. Okay, try to protect the knowledge because this knowledge carries certain socio-cultural aspects. For example, to cure a particular disease or even for a headache. Okay, the tribal people who are expertise that if you use a particular part of a plant, leaf or wood or stem, okay, that may reduce the headache. But in case of the socio-cultural patterns, they would not like to reveal the name of that plant. They may say that the moment I reveal the name of the plant, it will lose its effectiveness. So that is the, what you can say in other way, a kind of the orthodox mentality. Okay, it's just revealing. So just see, if this person is expert who is knowing this to cure the headache in this way, if he or she dies, what about his knowledge? That knowledge will also die with that person, right? So under this Biological Diversity Act 2002, okay, efforts have been done to protect and preserve these lands, to invite the younger generation of the tribal population to learn the ifs and buts of their traditional knowledge from their own ancestors, from their own parents, so that their knowledge can be passed to next generation. Okay, further, a kind of the awareness campaign is required, that if you having this kind of orthodox mentality that the moment we reveal the name of that plant or that tree, okay, it will lose its effectiveness. It is not scientifically proved. So better for the protection of future generation, please reveal that knowledge. But it is the other way of traditional knowledge, where majority of the tribal population, even India, not even India, I think every other parts of the world, they still rely on their traditional medicine, what we call the ethno-medicine, as a student of anthropology, okay, for the curing of certain diseases. And there are ethico-religious persons who have quite importance in the tribal society and the society, are the, what we call the expert or medicinal men. Okay, certain nomenclatures which run in the anthropological literature. So that is all about, I think, traditional knowledge, how to protect and preserve traditional, which is quite important. Okay, even this pandemic crisis, it has been found that there are a number of tribal groups who are quite away from the effect of this COVID-19 pandemic, because they rely on their ethno-medicines, thus they are boost up their immune system, and this corona, this COVID-19 has no way affected them or their people. They are still relying. Okay, further, for the millions of the indigenous people all over the world, which we have the 370 millions, okay, it's very difficult to reach or to access the allopathic medicine are doctors. That has its own regions. The P of doctors, high P. The marginal sections, the weaker section, the tribal, poor tribal people, their community of family are not in comfort zone to pay that fees. So they have no choice but to rely on their traditional medicine or ethno-medicine for curing various diseases. And even in India, if you see this time, I think though allopathic, there is also the debate between the allopathic medicine and Ayurvedic medicine, what you call the traditional knowledge or traditional medicines. But majority of the Indians during this pandemic times, expressions might be there everywhere, one way or other way, everyone is applying the Ayurvedic medicine or ethno-medic medicines to maintain their immune system high. Okay, that's so the importance of traditional knowledge or ethno-medicine in the life of the people in general and the life of the tribal people in particular. Right?
All right, yeah, and I know. Have you seen a lot of? So you talked a little bit about the COVID-19 stuff, and I know here in the United States, a lot of indigenous tribes have lost a lot of their elders as a result of COVID-19. We've had a really bad time with losing a lot of their knowledge, and at least in here in the United States. A lot of these languages are hanging by a thread. Is that and with the language goes the knowledge. Is that a big thing that you're seeing in the places you're working?
Sure. Yes, you can also. It's not only about the ethno-medicine that is on the verge of extinction. It's also about the language. Okay, as I said in the beginning, the tribal people find difficult mingle with the mainstream culture. And when they try to mingle with the mainstream culture, the process of acculturation occurs, where the influence of dominant cultural group to have their so-called superiority position in the world or in their own society, they are not liking to evolve the notion of their own language patterns. Rather than they think about that it's better to adopt the cultural traits, whether it is the language or the religion or lifestyle, food culture, dress patterns, okay, of the mainstream cultural people, so that we will be also known as a modern persons. In their own age, forget about criticizing the other peoples. This is my personal observations while working with them. The younger generation, they themselves are not interested to wear their own traditional dresses. Yeah. They're himself not interested to talk in the, they are more interested to apply the kin term like the mama, papa, daddy, rather than ayya, daya in their local language, right? So that I think, and that's why even in certain community are also on the verge of extinction, because they are failing to cope with the existing climate change. Okay. And certain terms, it's not only about the language or traditional knowledge, even the community as a whole is on the verge of extinction. Certain tribal groups of India, like the Andamani Nicobaris, Jarvis, Onges, Centralese, they are very less in numbers, while the population of other social groups are increasing day by day. Here, the population of these tribal groups are decreasing. Okay, because they have failed to adapt with the existing environmental conditions. So there are the various regions where we are losing. It's about whether we talk about the language, or religion, or any other things. Tribal people are losing, yes, but the government doing its best effort in the form of various other legal enactments, whether the rights, the land rights of the tribals or the forest rights in the form of legal enactment to protect, preserve the language, or what we can say the broader way, their cultural identities. While developing themselves, they are not supposed to lose anyway their traditional cultural identities. And that is only the difference when we talk about the tribal law and law of the people in general. Tribal are nothing but the following of the traditional practices, what we call the customary law. Okay, so custom has been given due credit in the tribal world by the respective governments or society at large. But tribal themselves, what I personally found, exceptions might be there, they are not interested to follow their own traditional ethos and ideology.
Yeah, that is always a big problem. I once did an interview with a Native American medicine man, and he said that a lot of these kids, we can't even get them to learn the songs or any of the traditions, and so he was on this quest to record everything so they could listen to it on their phones or their MP3 players or whatever. And he made some success with that, but it's tough. And so, you're talking about generations, so let's ask a little bit about kinship, because one of your articles that you sent me over was on kinship. So how have family institutions changed? You mentioned, where was that term? Joint families, right? So these joint families, how have they or what is a joint family, and how has that changed as a result of all this globalization stuff that's happening to these communities?
Well, as you know, it's not only about the tribal who have changed. I think the impact of modernization and now the change, plus what we call the globalization, has affected everyone. So tribal may be particular, but every society has changed. Even we as an individual, a Professor Michael Clement himself, before 5 years and after 5 years, he himself will find so many changes at the level of his own personality. Forget about the other changes in the society.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that also happened in case of the tribal peoples. When we talk about the families, so families not only about the tribal India, but I think families everywhere, the joint family system for which India is known all over the world, right, has changed a lot. And it has its own regions, the employment opportunity outside their own worldview, okay, increase in population. So there are various factors. For example, though the certain tribal groups of this country, they still rely on their joint family structure when compared to the tribals of northeastern regions of India. They're still having their joint family structure. They're a little bit changed. They are not changed a lot. Still, the Tharwad term is used for the joint family structure among the Nayars of Kerala, a state in India, okay, or the other tribal groups of India. Tharwad means a joint family system. Tavji means the nuclear family system. So nuclearization of family has resulted because of the various change factors, as I mentioned, the employment outside their own worldview, okay, our own society, the decrease in land, population pressure, etc. So these are some responsible factors. Education, right? That is not available in your own area. Definitely it will force you, if you want to go further for higher education or any education which is not available in your area, definitely will break away yourself from your traditional family structure, what you call the joint family system. But in certain extent, joint family structure has changed, but jointness is still there. Try to differentiate here. Joint family structure has changed, but jointness is still there. Means that because of these various factors, the employment, the population pressure, education, right, people now migrated from their native places to the other places. But still, on certain occasions, they have the joint property rights. They jointly participate in their family gatherings or their societal gatherings. So jointness is still there, though the joint family structure has changed a lot because of these factors which I mentioned. So that is the another observation in case of joint family system. Okay, and when you're talking about the customary rights, here in case of the Indian tribes, remember there's a formal category which is known as the scheduled tribe rather than the tribe. So sometimes the definition of tribe and itself vague definitions. Even if you see the International Labour Organization, okay, it's convention number 169, that mentions both the indigenous people and tribal groups to protect their rights and privileges. So it varies from one society to other society as it has different nomenclatures. In case of India, they are known also as the Adivasis, Girijan. Giri means the mountain. Okay, Banvasi, forest dwellers. So they are different nomenclatures, but there's a formal category for these tribal people, that is the scheduled tribes. Remember one thing, that every tribe is not a scheduled tribe, but every scheduled tribe is a tribe. The reason that under Article 342 of the Indian Constitution, okay, this specification has been done to place certain tribal groups of this country under this article in Indian Constitution for their special welfare measures. Okay, so there is a difference between the tribe and scheduled tribes. This is the one formal difference. Tribes, as we all know, those who have their independent origin, their geographical locations, okay, their community sentiments, their unique cultural identity in terms of the language, religion, political structures. But in case of the scheduled tribes, there are also the tribal group. But those who are not the scheduled tribes, but being part of traditional social structure and dignitated tribes, they are facing some sort of issues in the form of not getting the benefits of many government schemes and programs here in India. Further, there are another category among the tribes itself, seeing their traditional cultural background, there are certain tribal groups numbering 75 in India. They are still at pre-stage of development or pre-stage of technology. And these tribal groups are known as the particularly vulnerable tribal groups. Earlier, they are known as the primitive groups. So in certain states, there's some tribal groups which are still backward in terms of their technological advancement. They still feel shy to mingle with the mainstream culture. They are not interested at all any kind of intervention by the government in the form of schemes and programs. Or in other words, we can say they still prefer the hunting and gathering, or they are the part of collection economy. Okay, so there are variations while defining the notion of tribe and while including the social groups to be called as a scheduled tribe or the primitive tribal groups, or what the new notion for those groups, the particularly vulnerable tribal groups, right?
Do they have some sort of like certification process for figuring out how to establish who is a formal tribe and who isn't? Because we had an interesting period here in the United States where a number of tribal identities were kind of wiped away in the 1950s and 1960s, which further eroded their ability to survive. Has that anything like that happened, legally speaking?
Yes, you are quite right here, because that also happened in India. Initially, it was basically seeing their cultural isolation from the mainstream culture of groups which have been designated as a tribe, but eventually it became the part of so-called socio-political affairs. So many tribal groups who were earlier designated as a part of the caste group, like in your society divided in terms of the racial distinction or racial discriminations. Here in India, it is more about the caste distinction or caste discriminations, right? So many social groups who were earlier termed as the scheduled tribes, now they became the scheduled caste, or earlier who were the scheduled caste, they became the scheduled tribes. Further, there is no uniformity. A particular tribal group may be designated as a scheduled tribe to avail the benefits of government schemes and programs. In the state of Uttar Pradesh, for example, in India, the same tribal group having the same cultural traits in terms of the occupation, religion, political, family, marriage, but being part of the another states, he may be designated as a community belonging to the scheduled caste or other backward sections. Three weakest sections of Indian society: the scheduled caste, the scheduled tribes, and other backward classes. So there is no uniformity in designating a particular social group as a scheduled tribe varies from state to state. Okay, that is the problem, the tribal India, and that problem comes in terms of providing the opportunities in government sectors, in terms of providing the opportunities in education sectors, especially the education institutions funded by the government. As you are aware about that the policy of affirmative action here in India, what we call the policy of reservation or quota system. So having all characteristics of same tribal structure, but you are not designated, you are having your list population, list numbers in that particular state, you will lose the benefits under that category if you apply for the opportunity in government sectors or in education institutions. So that is the kind of the vagueness or ambiguities in terms of policy implementation, while designating a particular social group as a tribe or scheduled tribe or caste or general caste or the scheduled caste in India here especially.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. I mean, a lot of Native American tribes have to navigate between county law and state law and federal law, and like each one have different rules, and there's a lot of that stuff going on, and then of course intertribal law, all kinds of things. So it sounds a lot of very familiar in that situation. So the other paper, and we'll talk for a few more minutes here, and we do have some questions which we'll field in the Q&A session in a few minutes. But your other article you sent to me was about women's status. So I want to talk briefly about women's status here and how that has changed between modernization and a lot of these traditional systems. So why don't you go ahead and tell us about your work with that?
Yeah. As I mentioned in the beginning, that when the nation became the part of nation state, country adopted a uniform structure of governance, that is the constitution. Okay. Under the constitution, especially there are two schedules, which are a special privileges for the scheduled tribes of India. That is the 5th schedule and 6th schedule. Okay. Article 244(1) of the Indian Constitution has a reference about the 5th schedule. And Article 244(2) of the Indian Constitution has a reference about the 6th schedule. Okay. That the bifurcation, seeing the preponderance of tribal population in certain states and union territories, the division of country in terms of geographical locations, you might be aware about this. Right. Okay. So under the constitution, the rights of everyone, it's not only about the general population, but more about especially the tribal populations or other vulnerable sections of Indian society, have been given due place. Any kind of discrimination against these people will be treated as an offense, a crime, with applicability of formal law. Okay. In case of the women, when you're talking about what the status of women, the status has also changed a lot, but the issue of change had not brought any desired result when we compare their men counterparts, especially in tribal India. Okay. So tribal women are lagging behind in many arenas, whether you talk about the education, political structure, okay, employment, or other kind of the opportunities. And when this new laws of the forest laws came into existence, the most affected people in India, that is the tribal women, right? But government is giving all sort of facilities to protect their rights, to bring a parity in the social order of the society, whether the women in general or tribal in particular, they all are supposed to develop themselves in the totality of behaviors while fully protecting their cultural rights. So now, for example, the patta land, the surplus land, which is granted to the landless people, especially the marginalized sections of the Indian society. Earlier, it was only in the name of seeing the patriarchal structure in a society. Okay, it was only in the name of male members of the family. Now, it will also be in the name of female head of the family. So that is also shift in the traditional outlook of when we talk about the gender differentiation or gender injustice. So women are getting also their rights. Further, the patriarchal notion is not everywhere. For example, the tribals of the northeastern regions of India, they are known for their matrilineal social structure. Okay, daughters have equal rights in the property of the parents, especially the youngest daughter. I would like to mention the name of some tribal groups like the Khasi and Garo. Khasi, Garo, and Jaintia. These are the three dominant tribal groups of the northeastern regions of India, especially the state of Meghalaya. You might have heard the name of the state of Meghalaya. Okay, so Khasi and Garo. The uniqueness of, you see, that's when daughters born, it is much celebrations. Okay, so you will see in certain families, people have 5 daughters, 6 daughters, 7 daughters, 8 daughters, no family planning. The region, it has the region that since daughters are considered the regal inheritor of the parental properties, so there will be no division here. And in this, the youngest daughter, for example, among the Khasi tribes, she is known in their local language, Ka Khaddu. She inherits the lion's share in parental property. Further, even after marriage, she is supposed to reside with her parents' house rather than going to her in-laws' house. So multi-local structure is there. Are you getting my point? Multi-local structure is there. Even the Garuj, the youngest daughter, what she is known in their local language, the Nokana. Okay, she shares the lion's share in parental property. And she is supposed to take care of all family members. Okay, though the major decision-making process is still in the hands of maternal uncle, who is generally considered head of the family. The system is local, okay, but the youngest daughter or daughters in general, they play major role in deciding the direction of their family or their society. So when we compare the women folk of the northern regions of India with the other parts of India, you will see that women of these regions, that the northern regions of India, are in much comfort zone in terms of their liberal attitudes when compared to the other parts of this country. Okay, so there are so much gender changes, gender orientations in terms of equality rights of both men and women. That is, I think, change. But there are the certain issues where still needs to be too much done, especially in the area of education, where tribal children, they are not getting, and this has its own socio-cultural practice. We can't blame any government, whether it's the government of the country, union government, or the government of respective states or union territories, the geographical divisions of a particular country. Okay, sometimes the socio-cultural factors are also equally responsible. For those hunter-gatherers, for them, survival is more important than the education. Okay, so these are the, I think, certain general observations, because a family of 5, 6 children or 7 children, what I have seen sometimes, the elder sister who just 10 or 12 years old, not elder as such, she become a second mother for her younger brother and sisters when parents go for fields. Okay, so where is the education? These are certain issues where socio-cultural, or we not the culture, socio-economic factors are also responsible, where daughters are especially not getting the education. Okay, and even the tribal children, dropout rates are too high in case of these marginal sections of Indian society. That same may be in case of the other countries. I am not aware about this, But here, that is the main regions behind the education, where the tribal children are getting more education, or they are not inclining themselves to involve to get better or higher education.
I actually worked in a rural village in Mexico at one point, doing a kind of illiteracy analysis. Why were there such high rates of illiteracy in this village? And the answer was simple. After a certain age, they go to work with the rest of their family. They go to work on the farm, or they go and gather food, or, I mean, the priorities for hunters and gatherers are naturally different. So, in terms of education and things. So thanks for sharing all of that. So we're going to dive into the question and answer session for the last about 15 minutes here or so. And so if you who are watching here today have questions, feel free to ask them. We have several questions already. So this goes back to the first part of our discussion here about traditional knowledge. And this question is by Hillary Kelly. Are there legal protections against biopiracy of tribal ethnopharmacology? So just for you viewers out there who may not know, this idea of biopiracy and ethnopharmacology is about stealing plant knowledge or medicinal knowledge for the purposes of big corporate conglomerates and giving nothing back to the community, and that's called biopiracy. Have you experienced any of that or seen any of that in your work?
Yes, I got the question. Okay, as I mentioned in between my talk, one of the legal enactment, that is the Biological Diversity Act 2002. Okay, that related the Convention on Biological Diversity. Remember, okay, India also enacted a legal enactment. Under this biopiracy, everything that protects the rights of the traditional people in terms of their traditional knowledge. Okay, so that is already there. And further, if any MNCs, what you mentioned about the multinational corporations, okay, if they want to establish any project in those areas, okay, benefit sharing will be there. It means what the benefits these MNCs have, certain percentage of their benefits will be given to these tribal people who have provided that traditional knowledge for their business. So law protects the rights of these tribal people in this country. Further, another legal enactment which came into existence in the year 2006, that is the scheduled tribes and other traditional forest dwellers, within bracket, the recognition of Forest Rights Act 2006. This act also protect and preserve the traditional knowledge of tribal people. There is another act also, that is the PESA Act. Provision of Panchayat extension in scheduled areas. There are 10 states in this country, in India especially, where the preponderance of tribal population is more. Okay, those areas are declared as scheduled areas, where this legal enactment, what I just mentioned, the PESA Act, insert provisions of Panchayat in scheduled areas. And Panchayats mean the concept of local self-government at village level. So there are legal enactments which try to protect the rights of the tribal people so far their traditional knowledge is concerned in India. But as we all know, law is all about interpretation and misinterpretation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was going to ask how well enforced is that law? Because it's one thing to have a law on the books; it's another thing to actually see if if it's actually working. Is it protecting their rights of their knowledge?
Yes, under that Biological Diversity Act 2002, they are the biodiversity management boards, right? They are the local registered at the village level, where everything is supposed to mention clearly about the utility of particular plant and trees, so that this knowledge will be, and there are gene banks where this knowledge will be preserved. Okay, so efforts on the part of the government or respective state government or government of the country are already there. But as I already mentioned, law is all about misinterpretation, interpretation, and further, why crime occurs? Crime is situational. Okay, so when law fails, definitely crime will occur. So piracy will be there. It means we have failed to protect the rights of those people. Okay, and sometimes seeing the lacuna in law itself. people do forgery or other things, which again the law, law doesn't permit. So that may happen, but in the larger interest of tribal people to protect their traditional knowledge, while talking about this, okay, ethnomedicine or other traditional knowledge, the efforts are there, the laws are there to try to protect, and that the special privilege given. Even no projects will take place in those areas under the scheduled areas. Okay, 5th and 6th schedule of the Indian constitutions, unless or until the people themselves are not giving their consent. What is consultation is mentioned there. Okay, no project will take place. Even any schemes of the government of this country will not apply in these areas falling under the 5th and 6th schedule of the Indian constitution. Okay, unless or until people are not taken into considerations. For that purpose, at the local level, in case of the scheduled areas, we have another concept of tribal advisory councils. These councils are more prominent than the state legislations. Under the 6th schedule, we have the district autonomous councils. So even the state legislation cannot force for any schemes or programs or projects unless and until they are not taking the confidence of the district councils, or in case of the under 6th schedule, on the tribal areas, and the tribal advisory councils under the 5th schedule, known as the scheduled areas. The reason is that these areas belong to basic purpose to protect, preserve the traditional, cultural aspects of these indigenous people, what you call in our country, in India especially, the tribal people. So like there, legal enactments in the form of legislations, if the judiciary is too proactive to protect the rights, another rights of in terms of, okay, that the land of tribes, scheduled tribes, cannot be transferred to non-scheduled tribes. Because these people are already on the margins of the society. They're having less lands. Exceptions might be there where the tribal communities are having big agriculturists, right? But majority of them are not there. To protect that land passing from them to non-tribals, laws are there that a tribal person cannot sell his or her land to a non-tribal persons. So laws are there to protect the rights of, for example, one of the law, it also protect the criminal kind of any criminal activities, the notion of untouchability. Okay, the Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989. So acts are there to protect, but since societies, we are human beings, conflict, chaos, quarrel, it is the natural aspect, and that's why what Emile Durkheim, the great sociologist term, okay, that crime is sociological in its approach. So it was there, it is there, it will be continued. How we can minimize? Okay, that is, I think, my personal observation.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's good to hear that there's definitely some policy in place and that there is some way of protecting the people for sure. I wish we had more of that too, but we have, here in the United States, we have a lot more of, corporate patents over certain plants or genes or all kinds of stuff, and that's, all in conflict right now, and of course all over the world too. But so let's move back into the joint family element here. So Hillary Kelly asks, how do current tax laws, housing codes, zoning laws, and inheritance laws affect joint family functioning?
If you see the notion of communal property resource or common property resource, this is still common among the majority of the tribes in India. Okay. While my talk, I mentioned that there might be slight change because of certain other factors, the education and employments, but jointness is still there. Okay, and that jointness still binds people to follow a set patterns of their day-to-day behaviors. And that's why the tribal people still give preference to their customs, traditions, marriage, farquage, that are also the habitual wage of daily activities. Okay, so jointness is still there. Joint India as a country whole. Now, nucleation of family has come up with the intents of this modernization, globalization, etc. I'm not going to that detail, but jointness is still there. Still people, if I see I'm a person here in search of job, I belong to the another states of Uttar Pradesh. I'm working in Madhya Pradesh, where the National Law Institute is situated. Okay, so because of my job compulsion, I am there, but still I am associated with my family. I have land. Okay, so that jointness is still there. That is the reference of the common property ownership. Okay, further, under this new legal enactment, what I mentioned between the Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Rights Act, Recognition of Forest Rights Act 2006, the government had done all sorts of efforts to protect the community rights of the tribal people, wherever the areas they belong. Okay. And that's why the tradition is still going on. That cultivation, you might have the one of the cultivation pattern, jhum cultivation, slash and burn cultivation, or shifting cultivation. The majority of the tribals belong to northeastern regions of the India. They still rely on that cultivation. Okay. Though there are certain forest laws which try to prohibit, not allowing, saying that create too much environmental pollution. But that is not the right, because they are the protector of forest. So for tribals are concerned, especially, they are nowhere the destructor, destroyer of the forest, because they have a symbiotic relationship between forest and themselves. Their whole life spent revolves around the forest. The fight for Jal, Jungle, and Jamin here in India. Jal means the water, Jamin means the land, and Jungle means the forest. Is quite apt in case of the tribal people, because majority of them, even today, after so much changes, after so much urbanization, they still rely on forest for their day-to-day survival. So if I rely on something, how I can think against that structure through which we sacrifice our daily needs? It's not only about the economic needs, cultural heritage, religious obligations. So it is a totality of structure, right?
Yeah. I mean, obviously they have very different relationships, versus a lot of the modernization, which is all extract, and to the detriment of the environment. So we are almost out of time here. So does anyone have any final questions? Any viewers have any final questions? Dr. Singh, do you have anything else to any final thoughts that you'd like to share or anything before we end here today?
I think there's no question. What I would like to mention here, when we're talking about the indigenous people, their worldview, the change, the ill impact of the development projects, okay, I think we are supposed to equally blame certain things. Tribals themselves are responsible. Okay, because when you are not giving preference to your own cultural heritage, cultural traits, do things how others will give preference. Why you feel inferior while talking your own native language? Why you want to become a part of so-called formal structure? When you are with your people, try to talk in your own language. When I visit my village, I forget about the English or even the typical Hindi. Okay, I speak my native language, the dialects, and I don't feel inferior. Being highly educated and teaching one of the prestigious school of India, right? Okay, so I think we have to feel why we give inferiority compared to our own dressage, our own food culture. So unless until we are not paying the attention, nobody other will come forward to pay the attention. So when you want to improve, improvement will start from your own door, rather than talking about others. Yes, they are the certain community, they are certain people. Okay, even in India, I will appreciate the people of Bihar regions. When the two Bihari people meet, whether they are the judges or they are the lawyers or they are the engineers, they prefer to talk in their own language. Let the others may laugh. Because what the purpose of language? To communicate. So you communicate when you meet the others. You think that if Professor Michael Tillman can't understand my language if I speak in Hindi, better to use the language where we can easily communicate to each other. But if I'm with my own persons, why I feel inferior? And why I feel others allow to feel inferior, others allowed to feel inferior. So whether it's not only about the loss of this local dialects in case of the tribals, when the general population is losing, how many people of our own societies, they are now accustomed with the traditional cultures, traditional rituals, traditional festivals. Because festivals we are just celebrating. Because if you ask anybody why you are celebrating this, the only simple answer comes, since it has been celebrated, I am also celebrating. But what is the reason behind the origin of this celebration, this festival, but the importance of particular culture traits which bind the whole society? Even the general people, or we so-called modern people, are now, I think, not favoring to pass this knowledge not in terms of information, knowledge in terms of including your cultural values to our next generation. So I think we all are equally responsible to protect and to preserve, or we all are equally responsible to destroy our own culture. Okay, a culture is there, dominant cultures are there, but if we prefer, for example, in those my own studies, women folks were more interested to wear their traditional dresses, but their men were not allowed. Their own local, I mentioned in my works, some of papers, I mentioned, okay, this, I am interested, but my men, even my husbands, they don't like us to wear our traditional dresses. What happened? On certain occasions, that is the festivals, or in the perform certain rituals, you will find those Tharu tribal women where I worked, okay, they are in their traditional dress up. Otherwise, they are just like us. Sometimes it becomes too difficult whether they are the tribals or I am the tribals on the lighter side. Got the way they speak, the way they dress, have their dress sense, the way they have their change the food culture. They seems more modern than us in case of certain tribal groups of India, right? We seems more tribal, so we are not a part of tribal structure. So I think the burden lies on everyone's shoulder to protect one's your own culture, and also to facilitate by the others in the government of those respective countries, all well-wishers want to preserve, protect the rights of these people in terms of their social, economic, cultural, religious, etc. In that way, only we can protect our identities, because this is what we're talking about. What is the whole discussion about our identities? Why I am different from you, or why you are different from me. So it's all about the identities. Okay, so change is ubiquitous. It was there, it is there, it will be there. Society tends to change. But if change becomes a part of total formation, that change will be more dangerous. Right? So it is very alarming for all of us to preserve and to protect our cultural aspects, not the cultural rights. Because when we talk about the rights, it means somewhere we have failed in our duties. That's we are talking about the rights. Because if we are fulfilling our duties, no question of right will arise. Question of right only arises when we have, the system, the order of society has failed somewhere to specify the needs of, remember the needs theory of culture as propounded by great anthropologist Malinowski. So it's the cultural arrangement in modern era. Who is the cultural arrangement? That is the state, that is the nation. The duty of the nation, duty of the respective states in terms of their geographical locations to protect the traditional identities of their people with the input of modern, because that is also required. Otherwise, as I mentioned, there are still tribal groups in this country who are known as the primitive tribal groups. The new notion, the particular, because it means they are still far away from the mainstream culture. They are still total in their traditional outlook. They are not interested at all to mingle with the modern culture. So there are some kind of awareness programs, sensitization programs are required by the respective governments, all other well-wishers taking the help of non-governmental organizations, what we call the NGOs. Okay, thus we can protect, we can also aware, we can also train, and that's why in the new education policy of the Indian government, which came in the year 2020, National Education Policy, Government India, more emphasis has been given on the language and culture. Because the moment you lose your identity, you will be no more the part of that societal arrangement. And this is only that culture reminds us our identity. Otherwise, we are the part of same social structure, Homo sapiens. 2 legs, 2 hands, 2 eyes. What's the difference? Nothing. Only in terms of culture, we differ from one another, right? That is all about my personal observation. Thanks.
Well, that's such an important message, and that's a great kind of closing statement you made there. It's easy to forget that these cultures are entire libraries of knowledge and experience, and and there's so much we lose by not working to preserve our own cultures and other people's cultures. So it's great to know that people like you are out there doing such important work. Thank you so much today for coming on the show and talking to us about your various experiences, some of your work. A couple of people have asked in the comments how we can get a hold of your stuff. I will make sure that we have some links up to some of your articles shortly so that people can find your work and engage with it. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yes, even you can write my mail. If possible, I can write my mail here. Okay. So if there are any query, they can also mail me. Can I write somewhere my email address here?
Absolutely. We can put your email contact in the description once the video that goes up in archive, which will be about an hour or so.
Just I'm typing. Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and we really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you, Professor Michael Kim, you too. Because of you, I am here. Okay, I think your audience might like this, whatever I discussed about the tribal in India, is the life of the community, the life of the society. Okay, so thank you so much for giving this opportunity. Hope in future again will come on some other aspect of the tribal India or other structure of Indian society. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You have a great day.
So